the youth from getting rotation. Nowhere in the nation. Program directors and DJs ignore it. Just so simply say top 40, and top 30, top 20, and top 10. Until you put more hip hop in.
We need media of our own. We need media of our own. We agreed to found an action movement and to call it Dignity. We agreed to found an action movement and to call it Dignity. We agreed to found an action movement and to call it Dignity.
We need help, international help.
Yeah.
We ain't got no help.
Agents.
Yeah, we need agents, we need emergency.
Yeah.
There's no help, no hospital, no electricity, nothing. No food, no water, nothing. There's too many people dying.
The 7.0 magnitude earthquake struck close to 5 p.m. on Tuesday, about 10 miles from Port-au-Prince. It was Haiti's worst earthquake in 200 years. Dozens of aftershocks measuring up to 5.9 in magnitude have rattled Port-au-Prince. Many people are gathered in parks, either sleeping on the ground or under makeshift tents as they wait for aid to arrive. Plane loads of rescuers and relief supplies are said to be on the way from the European Union, from Canada, Russia, and Latin American nations. 2 U.S. aircraft carriers are also expected to arrive soon. With communications largely down, it's been very difficult to reach people on the ground in Haiti. But late last night, Democracy Now! Spoke to a young father named Jesse Hagapian in Port-au-Prince over the phone. Jesse had been visiting Haiti from Washington State, along with his wife and 1-year-old child. For the past 2 days, he's helped care for the injured.
I'm in Pétionville, just outside of Port-au-Prince, Haiti. We were staying at a hotel here when the earthquake hit. Fortunately, me and my son and my wife, who are all here, were fine. We were untouched by the damage. Our hotel room was completely destroyed, but we weren't injured at all. But unfortunately, tens of thousands of people have been injured and have lost their homes. It's just a catastrophic scene. We had one nurse at our hotel, so he was out front helping people who were coming in who were injured. When word got out that there was a nurse at our hotel, people just started bringing their injured family members to the hotel. I was deputized by the nurse to help in whatever way I could, so he would tell me where a broken bone was, and I had to learn on the fly how to make a splint. The injuries that we saw over the last 2 days have just been horrific. It's hard to describe. I was working on a boy today who, his father was there speaking in Creole, so we were trying to get a good translation, but basically what he explained was that their house collapsed and he got out. His son was trapped under the rubble, but his son could still yell, and they spent all night trying to find him, and finally they dug him out and they brought him to our hotel because there was one nurse at our hotel. You know, most of the hospitals are totally over capacity, and so the fact that there was one nurse was a huge draw to people. So he brought his son here and was barely breathing, and we worked. He had a head injury. His bone was sticking out of his leg, and we worked with the bed sheets that we'd stripped from the hotel and ripped into 4-inch long strips to wrap around his head and his leg to wrap a splint on. But he died right there today in front of us. And had to be just carried off. The injuries just kept coming all day long. Head injuries, people with multiple broken legs, people catatonic who couldn't speak. Everybody is asking for medicine. You know, we don't have Advil. We didn't have gauze. We don't have hydrogen peroxide. Like, it was one nurse and me, who happened to be a guest at this hotel because my wife is doing HIV work in the country. I happened to be there to help this nurse, but I have no medical training, and I just had to do whatever he explained to me to do. Too many people had sheets over them and notes because they were dead. And if you go through the streets, you can hear. What's really eerie is the sound of just screaming, which is constant. I can hear it right now. It's just people either singing and praying or just really loud screams, and there's been a lot of tremors over the last 2 days, so when the earth shakes again, much more mildly, people start to scream again, so it's a really eerie sound.
That's American Jesse Hagapian, who had gone with his wife and child to Haiti just a few weeks ago. His wife is an HIV educator, speaking to us from Haiti. We now go live to Ansel Hers, an independent journalist who's been living in Haiti since September. We're talking to him through Skype. Ansel, welcome to Democracy Now! Can you describe the situation at this point?
People, I think, are still in the streets trying to stay away from houses and walls and buildings that can further collapse, buildings that are fragile. The house that I was staying in, for example, is still standing. It's one of the few multi-story buildings in my neighborhood that did not collapse entirely, but there are cracks in the foundation. So as your previous guest in the recording said, people are extremely scared, especially when there are aftershocks that seem to just come randomly, that there's going to be further destruction. And so people are in the streets, people are in the public squares, looking, waiting for some kind of help. But there's really not much of it forthcoming at all that I've seen. I was in the streets all day yesterday and the day before since the earthquake. I didn't see a single aid worker or a single official aid convoy from the Haitian government or from an aid agency or from the peacekeeping force that's here, the United Nations. So it's just a terrible situation, and I think people are just trying to survive day to day.
And Ansel, what about the local police, or have there been any organized efforts by some of the communities to try to do some kind of rescue?
I haven't seen efforts on a community level, but I have seen efforts of just a dozen or 24 people centered around a building that's collapsed, schools that collapsed downtown, hearing children cry out from beneath the rubble, hearing people or seeing somebody and just trying to dig through with their hands or also with shovels and with pickaxes to try to get those people out. At the National Cathedral, for example, a huge part of that building just fell off, and there were a bunch of men trying to pull a woman out from the door. She was just squeezed in there, and she looked like she was nearly dead, but they were just trying to pull her out as hard as they could. And so there's a lot of that going on, just ordinary Haitians trying to help each other because there's nobody else that they can rely on.
Ansel, can you describe what happened 2 days ago at 5 o'clock? Where were you? What did you feel?
I was in my house in a neighborhood called Jacquet that I share with Haitians. It's a relatively poor neighborhood below Pétionville, which is the wealthy suburb outside downtown Port-au-Prince. And I was in the second story of the house. Things started shaking. I wasn't sure what was happening, and then things started falling off the walls. And at that point, I realized what was going on. Thankfully, again, our house did not fall, but quickly left the building and went outside with my camera to start talking with people and shooting footage. There was just a state of panic in the streets. People screaming, people running every which way. I ended up hopping into a pickup truck with a man who was bleeding profusely from his head. They were, I think, trying to get to some kind of hospital to try to make their way to medical care, and they ended up having to just stop several yards down the road because of a blocked tree. And that man later, he just died a few minutes later, because there was no access to any kind of emergency medical care at that time. And there were a lot of buildings in the area that were just collapsing on themselves, particularly large houses. And I saw bodies, just squished between concrete as well. It was horrible.
And